Hi, and good morning. Welcome to the 2021 Ghana Tourism4SDGs Conference. My name is Oswell Cole, and I'll be the moderator for this conference. I have with me the panel members, and they will start introducing themselves. So I'll start with Kofi.
All right, good morning, Brian. Good morning, everyone. Cool. I'm Kofi Gyamfi. Introduction, he puts me on the spot, not knowing what to say, but I work with Unilever in my daytime job at leading strategic sourcing for West Africa region, and out of work, I'm always on the move, traveling somewhere to see something new in Ghana or out of Ghana where my budget can take me. And also being quite interested and excited about sustainability, I thought this was a great place to have a conversation. So happy to meet you all, and I hope by the end of today we'd have learned a thing or two from each other. And maybe, who knows, we can travel together one day.
Jason?
Yeah, so hello everyone. I'm Jason Anthony, Country Director for the Explorers Club. And we are actually a club aimed at promoting the attainment of the SDGs, especially through tourism. So it's actually a great day to actually discuss what we can do as individuals, as society, as groups and as clubs and all that to help attain the SDGs, especially through tourism. So I'm hoping for an insightful conversation today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jason. Ayo, please.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Ayowale. I'm Country Director for AIESEC in Ghana. AIESEC is a youth organization, a global youth organization. And what we do is to strive to develop leadership in young people all around the world, and also, of course, here in Ghana. And when I'm not doing my work in AIESEC, analyzing businesses, I usually do business analysis, and then I also come up with business packages for companies. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to be here because I'm so passionate about the SDGs and sustainability as a whole. And as an organization is one of the things we are very interested in. So it's really an exciting one for me. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ayo. And to Joyce, please quickly introduce yourself.
Well, a very good morning to you, and thank you very much for having me. I'm Joyce Mogtari. I'm a lawyer who specializes in maritime law. I'm also special aide to former President John Dramani Mahama, and of course, former Deputy Transport Minister of Ghana.
Thank you, Aunt Joyce. So we will start with the conference today, and a few key facts is that in terms of SDG attainment, Ghana is ranked at 114th out of 165 countries, and with a percentage score of 62.49. That was as of this year. But interestingly, as of last year, we were 100 out of 163 with a score of 65.37. And with this, that shows there's a huge drop in terms of our achievement towards the SDGs. And we with our conference, trying to see how best we can help in pushing the SDGs. So starting with the first question, I want to go with what are some of the challenges that you think Ghana is facing in terms of the tourism sector? And I'll start with Auntie Joyce.
Very much, and good morning to you, Ghana Tourism4SDGs 2020. And I particularly think that your theme, achieving the SDGs through tourism in a pandemic, is rather interesting because, as we all know, we are currently going through a pandemic. COVID-19 has wreaked so much havoc, and somehow, despite the arrival of all these vaccines, we still have very serious challenges. I think that, for example, here in Ghana, we do have a strong tourism bracket. I think what we have not succeeded in doing is how we would link an effective tourism sector to the Sustainable Development Goals. I think in most countries, especially in developed countries, and because I actually studied maritime international law, I like to focus more on what coastal countries in particular benefit largely from the being coastal countries in terms of our tourism, and of course our reach when it comes to effective promotion of our tourism. I think that Ghana has not utilized effectively its God-given gift in terms of our tourism, especially along our coastline. Ghana has an extremely long coastline of about 800 knots towards the sea. But you should go and walk around along most of these tourist sites, especially along our coast. And you find that in most of these coastal communities, there's lack of employment, abject poverty, inadequate funding to develop most of these tourist sites. It is insightful that in 2011, we actually passed the Ghana Tourism Act. This was actually supposed to create and establish a tourism authority, an authority that we hoped would harness what we have, look out for what we do not have, find investment, and add on to existing excitement when it comes to most of our tourist sites. One is inaccessible tourist sites, challenges to do with road networks leading to most of these key tourist sites. Thirdly, it is also to do with cost of travel even to Ghana. And I'm sure that you have actually been in this industry for some time, and you do appreciate that travel to Ghana is relatively very, very, very expensive. Our inability to develop our maritime transportation, in particular to do with passenger transport, more than the carriage of goods transportation. Our inability to attract cheaper aircrafts to ply our routes, even though we have tried very hard to develop our ports of entry, especially with the recent investment in our Terminal 3. We had hoped that we would position ourselves as an aviation hub, not just as a gateway to West Africa and Africa, but of course as a gateway to the world. I believe that last year we experienced a year of return. It appears that most people have had a certain lasting impression that the excitement of arriving in Africa, specifically in Ghana notwithstanding, the safety and protection that this country affords, that the expensive cost of travel, cost of hotels, cost of food has been one of the lasting impressions of most of those who arrived here last year, excited to be part of the year of return. So certainly inadequate funding. I believe that there's also a need for a certain national policy regarding development of tourist sites and tourism. I believe that there must also be a certain commitment on the side of key stakeholders to actively promote our tourist sites. But you see, there can be no promotion when access to that particular site is not as welcoming, neither is it as safe, nor have we worked on promoting safety of persons who travel or visit these sites. I believe that when you take the Mule Game Park in particular, it has seen some recent injection of cash, great improvement in the facilities, and of course, the zoo has been quite attractive in recent times. But I believe that in terms of this exoticism, you can't compare to what you have in, for example, Kenya, the safari in particular. You can also not compare this to what you have in South Africa, where they also have a safari, and of course in Namibia and other African countries in the south part of Africa. So certainly Ghana has actually done some work. We haven't done too badly, but I think there is enormous room for improvement. Take, for example, developed countries where tourism has become the mainstay of their economies, especially in some European countries, even in island states, such as Malta, such as Cyprus, such as Greece. most of what you see is as a result of great economies built around tourists and tourism. Indeed, some of these countries would probably not survive if you didn't have such key tourism that they attract. In fact, most of their GDP are based on tourist visits and investment, and the economy is largely hinged on tourism. So certainly when you look at the SDGs, especially the 17 SDGs that we have, they largely cover not just our economies of scale, they cover our health, they cover our human capital development, they cover what we can do to promote the health of our nation, to promote the health of our economy, to promote the health of our citizens. Because indeed, if we are able to use tourism as a way of developing our country, then we can also develop a certain logistics chain, which will first and foremost generate jobs for our people. It will invite tourists who will come and exchange knowledge and a cross-fertilization of ideas. It will also set our country as a gateway to most of the things that we all envisage and want to see in terms of our development. I believe that we have also not performed as well as we anticipated on the SDGs because we have not worked to link mostly our tourism in terms of even health facilities. Ghana, in terms of this side of Africa, has some fantastic health facilities. We have some of the very best professionals in terms of medical needs across the African continent. I believe that we can encourage, by way of introduction, further participation in our health sector. This will create more jobs. This will open up our country to people who are coming in here, not just for the excitement of visiting our tourist sites, but to take advantage of the health facilities that we can boast of. I believe we can also look at it in terms of gender parity and equality. If we develop adequately our coastal areas, it would largely reduce poverty, because remember that most of these tourists are attracted really to the beaches. Look, the sea sand that we have here in Ghana is a very highly expensive commodity. In island states such as Malta, they actually have to import sea sand because most of the sea that they have is covered by these huge stones. You go to Mauritius where they even have sand, they still import sea sand. So we have something amazing, something beautiful, something that we can still consider as a gift from God, really, beyond the gold and beyond the diamonds and beyond even the exploration of oil and gas as we've discovered in recent times. Yes, all these things promote jobs, they promote a better economy, but they leave behind largely the human capital. Look around you in most of our mining areas, for example, Takwa, Pristia, all of these mining communities. How have the communities that live around the mining areas benefited? Yes, most of the families have gotten jobs. Some have been well educated and risen to the very highest levels, but the communities have remained unaffected by the mines. Take, for example, currently the oil exploration going on. You go to the Western region. Yes, Jomoro and other places have benefited from the Ghana Gas Company and its installations. Indeed, we have actually developed a huge interest in terms of our oil exploration activities with companies such as ENI, Total, and Tullow competing for space to explore our oil. So certainly the seabed has not just delivered the oil that we need, the exclusive economic zone has actually fed us also through our fisheries. But in terms of our development along benefiting from tourism, it is usually that advantage, that voyage that allows a man or woman, girl or child to visit another place that they probably have never thought about, to read about, to imagine what it will be like to visit Ghana. Take, for example, all of our areas in terms of the central region, our very historic communities. How have we preserved those artistic facts? Remember that even when you live in certain parts of the world, visiting some parts of the sea, just to see wreckages left behind as vestiges of the First and Second World War are a matter for anthropological experiments. People benefit wildly from them. I mean, National Geographic, was actually developed largely out of people's tourist interests and photographs that started to surface, and suddenly documentaries developed around these same installations. So the world over, we cannot overlook or underestimate the benefits of tourism to any country. In fact, the benefits of tourism to a coastal country such as ours should not be underestimated. Imagine that we had passenger and cruise liners calling in our ports here in Ghana as regularly as they do in other jurisdictions. Can you imagine what that could do in terms of boosting our tourism? But remember that you cannot boost tourism if you have not worked on your hospitality facilities. I believe that Ghana still has very high cost of hotel facilities, very, very steep in terms of payments for nights, for day, and whatever. Across the country, there are no exceptions. Take, for example, the sort of facilities that you have, for example, in a developed country, and compare it to what you pay for here in Ghana. It could be a huge disincentive for why our tourism has also not blossomed as we've anticipated. Take, for example, our roads leading up to some of these tourist sites. They still remain a nightmare. Look at the road crashes that we have recorded, even in terms of travel to the central region in particular. That leaves enormous anxiety in a lot of people traveling to this part of the world. Look at our transportation facilities, for example. I must confess that we have come very, very far. But I believe that we could also still focus more on a modally complementary system of transport, which can allow a tourist, for example, from Nigeria to arrive here by train, go by train to Akosombo, go by train to the central region, name it. We have focused more on the heavy lifting, that we've needed our cargo trains. We've actually focused more on our ports in terms of the cargo that we receive. Yes, sea trade still probably contributes about 80% to our development, especially for a developing country where we depend largely on imports. But why have we not focused also on using the same seaports, which were used, unfortunately, to transport our forebears to an unknown land where they served as slaves, but has not in any way been utilized to benefit us in any way in terms of our travel? Because remember, it is still very efficient to travel by sea. It is effective because you can stop at various ports and enjoy the sights and scenes. You can visit as many countries. And remember, I always tell people that one of the most well-educated individuals we have the world over are normally seafarers, because they get to see just about every part of the world. It is also because of the adventurous nature of their job. So beyond the heavy lifting, beyond carrying cargo, I think that Ghana can still invest more in its tourism, and especially in its tourism sector. Look at the number of jobs that hotels alone creates. Look at the logistics chain in the hospitality industry in terms of food, in terms of water, in terms of transportation, name it. The hospitality industry has an opportunity singularly to open up our future as we never imagined. I mean, reading through our Ghana Tourism Act of 2011, I was actually quite surprised that it did not even target any of the key SDGs that we have. So it could be the reason why persons who come to a judge on the basis of what we have done in terms of SDGs probably have not found enough, because there probably does not exist an adequate framework to encourage a certain linkage between the SDGs and, of course, our key sectors. Look at the number of students who get trained by a lot of these hospitality institutions. They come out and they're looking for jobs. Look at our aviation sector. It requires a huge influx of caterers and catering facilities. Look at the transportation sector. Imagine that we had beyond the kinds of transport systems that we have. In most other countries, you can travel across Europe by train and by bus. By air is actually a luxury. But for persons who really want to see and tour the world, and you should talk to some of our footballers, they travel to some of these games by buses, very comfortable buses with internet facilities, with Wi-Fi, name it. It's so luxurious, you'd almost think that you are actually on board a cruise liner and leaving one place to the other. I think that commending this initiative by the Ghana Tourism4SDGs, I think is a fascinating opportunity to have an insightful conversation that could at least benchmark on the best examples the world over. Take, for example, Greece, take, for example, Cyprus, take, for example, Malta. They do not have any land like we can boast of, but they have actually used this common heritage of mankind to serve their own purposes. The Knights of Malta actually developed out of this small island state and has been one of the greatest exports for a state like that. Currently, the United Nations has a state party agreement with Malta, training maritime lawyers across the world. These are all opportunities that a country such as that, a small island state, they have actually become a repository, a registry for ships, especially pleasure boats such as yachts, etc. And they make enormous money and resources, hard currency from these things. Remember that countries such as Bahamas have actually become tax havens for the rich. You can leave the United Kingdom, you can leave the United States and relocate and live on one of these islands. You can even, for crying out aloud, own an island if you're rich enough. It is because they have developed adequately their services in terms of transport, in terms of health, in terms of aviation, in terms of the economy. So it allows for a certain economies of scale. We focus too much on volume. Sometimes the value also helps and serves as a very good point of contact where you can have value in terms of customer service. And this is actually one of the areas where tourists have actually had issues with our Ghanaian hospitality. The lack of a certain type of customer care takes away the experience. Because remember that places such as Italy were actually built on their hospitality. The nature of the persons who receive you, the persons who work in the tourist sector, the guides you meet would make you decide whether you want to buy an island in the Bahamas or not. And usually you'd meet in some of these countries, I dare say, you could take a taxi, for example, meet a cab driver who knows the country so well. He can tell you where the best tourist attractions are, where the best discos are, where the best services, catering, hotel, name it. You can arrive even without any reservation, and the cab driver you meet can make your experience one you'll never forget, a memorable one. How many Ghanaians can you meet at random who can tell you and I where the best experiences are in terms of tourism? Look at the types of fabric we have, our kente, our tie and dye, name it. How have we marketed these things to attract more tourism? Our port facilities are one of envy in and around Africa. How have we marketed them as tourist sites for people who are visiting? How have we partnered with companies that have cruise liners to bring their passengers to our ports of call to experience our beautiful country? But then above all, how much investment have we put in our tourist attractions to open up tourism in a way that we all anticipate? I think that it is actually a challenge to you all in particular to find ways through competitions, through articles, through short videos, through Instagram, through YouTube, name it. I am happy that this morning you are actually broadcasting also on YouTube. Try and, find short clips about little parts and beauties about our country. You can market this within a few seconds and you'll be surprised that this can go a very long way. But you must also work harder to improve upon the experience. Because you see, once the tourist has a great time, they would actually tell another person. They will share their experiences with other people and others will come. I know tourists who arrived here and chose to stay. They went to the Bree Hills and found a very beautiful location and decided they're not going back to Europe. I travel across the Volta region and I look at that beautiful part of our country and I wonder just how many things we can still do to improve upon our tourist facilities in that region. Look at northern Ghana. There is just so much one can see and experience. Our weaving industry, the basket making industry, our sheer industry. The shea tree is still quite a mysterious one of the greatest enigmas of nature that God gave to us here in Ghana for free. Our cocoa sector is still largely unexplored in terms of our tourism. But we go to other countries, for example, to Switzerland, and we go and visit cocoa processing factories. How many of our young people here in Ghana have ever visited a cocoa processing factory in Tema? Very few people. It is insightful that currently there are a lot of private businesses who are actually engaging in adding value to cocoa. Unlike before, many young people are investing in shea butter and producing all sorts of things from it. The basket weaving industry has moved a long way, but I believe that government still has a role to play if we want to move up notches on all the peer review mechanisms that currently do not rate us very well in terms of our performance regarding the Sustainable Development Goals. I believe that if we are able to focus on developing our tourism in the way that is required, that we build that logistics chain in the way that it is value-oriented, we can attract more young people, we can create more jobs, we can largely alleviate poverty by building a more resilient tourist industry and sector for the benefit not just of the good of Ghanaians, but of course as an experience for individuals across the world. I think this is what we want to see, and this is what we need to achieve. But I believe also that it's also a partnership. You can even have, for example, there are hotel owners who have developed the road facilities leading up to their facilities. There are many of them who have built very beautiful. I visited a church somewhere in Ekopon where they even have a real carriage inside the facility to take you around if you're a tourist. So these are things that private people have actually contributed to our tourism experience. But of course, I think that government still owes tourist sites better roads, good water, safety, protection, and above all, roads that actually are in motorable condition and transportation that allows for one to move from one place to the other. Look, the World Bank has always maintained that most of the developed countries that we all experience, that we all imagine our country to be like, have developed largely because they have a modally complementary system of transportation. It is something we should not overlook. The benefits of arriving here by air, moving from the airport in Kotoka, for example, by train to Pram Pram, it saves you time, it is more efficient, it's faster, it's effective, and of course, above all, the risks associated with travel by rail or train has always been at best at the minimum. So people will definitely always choose to travel more by rail than to travel by road. So if we are able to develop a modally complementary system of transportation, it would give our tourism sector a boost like no other. I think that a certain commitment is required by governments so that if we have an effective transportation system, can you imagine what we can do for health tourism, what we can do to improve travel experience, how we can reduce cost even of travel in and around Ghana. And of course, once we can assure the safety of travelers, then of course it means then that, because you see, one of the greatest selling points that Ghana has is that we are a very safe country, that democratically we are stable, that we have a constitution that actually guarantees the rights of everybody, that we have a judiciary that works, albeit slowly, but works effectively, that we have a police system that is in place to ensure safety of our people. Yes, we've had a few ups and downs, we've had some challenges, but I think that relatively, and in comparison to the other countries around us, Ghana has been stable for quite some time now. And that stability affords us a level playing field to attract not just investment, but investment even into our tourist sector. Now we have gas, we no longer have challenges even with petroleum, so we can actually build transportation systems that can allow for a more effective tourist sector and industry, because the only people who will benefit is not just our foreign exchange, but certainly our youth as well. We have a challenge right now, youth unemployment. A lot of interventions are taking place, but it still remains a challenge. And Africa actually has the largest youth bulge that we can possibly think of. You know that piracy is still a challenge when it comes to maritime transport, even when it comes to cargo moving from one place to another. Our waters still experience serious piratical activities. There's a lot that the Navy is doing, that the Ghana Maritime Authority is doing, but the Port Authority is actually doing to ensure safety of our waters. We have clear navigable signs, and so there are no issues there. What we need to do now is to ensure that we develop our tourist sites in a way that allows for individuals to come here. Look, you can travel everywhere as a tourist. You have categories for the super rich. You have categories for the not so rich. You have categories even for youth. I remember as students, there even used to be lower ticket rates to travel abroad for students at the time. And I think there was a company called STA or something, I don't remember the full rendition now, that actually made a lot of money from encouraging students to travel at lower cost. But of course, those who can afford it can still travel the world over, have the best of experiences. But certainly young people in and around Africa and the world should be able to travel also to Ghana, experience our tourist sites happily. People will always tout the safety, they tout the availability of transport, they tout the food, they tout the hospitality. But I believe that we can still raise the bar on the experience. And of course, work also to improve upon costs. The customer is the first you meet when you get to a hotel. How have we improved upon customer service in health, in our economy, in our investment sectors? Remember that we need to ensure that there's integrity in all the key sectors that will encourage also participation by other investors even in our tourist and our tourism sector. Because if we have a certain trademark, if we have a certain human capital, then of course investors are happy to take advantage of it. So certainly we can do more. I believe that we've come a very long way over the years, but I think that tourism can take us to the next level if we can only focus, put in a little bit more effort, train more people, advocate for more investments to improve upon the tourist experience, work upon our tourist sites, improve upon access, for example, on preservation, which is key for most of these tourist sites, even improvement and modernization, because the experience of tourism is now global. If someone were to visit a tourist site here in Ghana, to compare the experience to what they get in Kenya, in South Africa, in Nigeria, name it. You might even be willing to compare it even to Europe, because that is the only way that you can judge on the experience. If you're coming here for medical tourism, for example, our health facilities have very well trained and are manned by some of the best in the world. But you should be able to get a hotel facility that gives you the comfort to have a home from home so that you can access medical facilities happily. We have a lot of international students who come to our universities. It is heartwarming that the University of Cape Coast has recently been adjudged as the best university here in Ghana. And there have been many tourists and international students who have benefited from this experience called the University of Cape Coast. The University of Ghana itself, likewise. In fact, the Maritime University is actually an ECOWAS-run university, and our students come in from across Africa and the world. So in terms of education and our tourism, we have actually succeeded in bringing in some of the very best and exporting some of our best also to some of these other educational institutions of learning. It is insightful that we have many, many products, not just of the University of Ghana or the University of Cape Coast or the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, but many of these exports have also brought back the knowledge and continue to impart positively on our young people. So personally, let me commend you once more and say that I actually join my voice to yours, that I look forward to us continuing to work to achieving the SDGs through tourism, especially in this current pandemic situation in which we find ourselves. And of course, even in the pandemic, the worst hit has been largely the tourist sector. I visited some of the very vibrant and hitherto robust hotels, and I shudder to think what losses they have made. This morning, I had an advert that the Tank Palace was opening all over again, its Chinese restaurant. So people have suffered enormous losses. There's recently a very interesting topic in law, which has only come up because of the nature of COVID and how it has affected people going into work. In America, for example, they used to have a system called the furlough system. It allowed for people to stay at home and be paid a basic wage because the employer wasn't making any money anyway. They were even allowed to stay at home and not get paid at all. It is a theory that developed in the United States of America because they have a huge workforce. Suddenly, it is creeping into conversations about employment contracts, specifically in legal arenas, because suddenly you can go to work and there is no work. And the employer is making no money because there's no business. And it's actually not through any fault of his or hers. So there are new developments. And there's a certain lexicon even that is creeping in. I mean, today we have this conference and we're actually doing it via Zoom. These are all things that have been thrust upon us because of the pandemic. So yes, people have found very, very ingenious ways to continue to engage, but nothing beats the personal contact. And I believe that for most of the persons within the tourist sector, for most of the investors in that sector, they have suffered huge losses and their workforce has suffered even more. It will take a lot more than one conversation for this all-important sector to redevelop, to reinvent, and above all, to rise above the losses that they are currently experiencing. So on my behalf, and of course, on behalf of all the other persons who are joining us this morning, I wish you all the very best. I look forward to you making some very, very, very useful recommendations in how we can improve upon our legal framework, how we can improve our tourist sites, how we can maximize the investment that comes into tourism, and how we can provide more tourism at less cost, but of course still enhance the tourism experience, irrespective of where you are coming from and what category of finance or economies of scales that you come from. Pretty much like we do when we go to any of the Caribbean islands that have thrived largely based on their tourism. I believe that we have a huge marine interest as a country. We are a massive coastal country. There is enormous benefit to be achieved. Look at a place like Las Vegas that has developed largely on betting and gaming. And most of the beautiful betting sites and hotels you'll find are actually on islands within Vegas. And these are also because they are within the exclusive economic zones, which allows for the country to benefit from taxes that are generated from this all-important industry. So certainly Ghana can still do more with its water bodies, with our lakes, and of course, attract even better tourism beyond the cargo that we use our water routes to ply. Thank you.
Thank you, Auntie Joyce. Touching a lot of things, and we're very grateful for them. And so going to Kofi, I think Auntie Joyce mentioned a lot of things and mentioned a lot of challenges we already have. I was thinking the next question would be, what should be the action step needed to tackle some of these challenges?
Great, thanks, Cole, and thanks, Joyce. That was such a moving outed speech. Really, really moved, and you know the horizon of the topics that you touched on is close to home, and it's really, really connecting, right? You shared so much. Thanks. It's just a pleasure listening to you. You know, share as much as we can think about in terms of what the problems are, what the challenges are, what should the solutions be like. That's a good one. Yeah. In terms of how we can, you know, solution towards some of the challenges that Joyce raised, I think it's pretty simple, right? I mean, in the confines of this conversation, talking amongst ourselves as the youth, one of the things that I think is a good solve for democratizing tourism, you know, because we need a critical mass of people patronizing tourism locally to give us all of the benefits that we can accrue from tourism, right? And so some of the things that I've thought about could help us democratize tourism and invite a critical mass of people to tour some of the sites that we have in Ghana and bring in the money, the resources, the enthusiasm that we need. I think one of the quick solve for me, it's about access to some of these tourist sites. Because there are so many hidden gems across the country that people don't know about. And so I think access will be a great opportunity to invite a whole lot of people to tour some of these tourist sites. Just last week, I was scrolling on Twitter and I saw a lady tweet about a location in the Eastern region, about a waterfall. And that was the only time in my entire life I've heard about that waterfall. And just the week after, I went straight to that waterfall. There's a gate fee, service fee that you pay to the caretakers over there, which they used to maintain the place. And I was surprised and I fell in love with the place, and I'm going to go there again. What happened? I also captured some images and reshared. And a lot of people reached out to me to say, hey, I'm going there next week. I'm going to go there the week after. I'm going to take my people there. I'm going to check this place out. And so just a simple act of somebody seeing some of these gems, capturing the experience and sharing, has invited a whole lot of people and a chain of people wanting to go see this place just because of access. And so I think one of the great ways we can solution towards inclusive tourism and democratizing tourism for everybody is access to information around where are these tourist sites. And because it's difficult to get in some of these places, we need information on how to get there. I drove there, but think about the number of people that can't drive there, right? They'll need to have a very good understanding of how do I get there using the public transport available for us. And so information around, where these storage sites are, how to get there, what to do when you get there, all of this information all together can invite a whole lot of people to see our tourist sites. So I think the great solve for me, one really critical solve is access to information around where these tourist sites are and how people can get there. And that would be a great invitation in calling in the critical mass of people that need to see these tourist sites. But that's one for me. I think the last one for me, because I'm a young person and I want to travel on budgets. I think what we need is about it's about standardizing tourist costs, right? Particularly in terms of transport and then accommodation. If we do have a very regulated cost to say, if you're a 3-star hotel which is certified by Ghana Tourism Authority, then this is only how much you can charge for a 9 stay in your hotel. So really harmonized and a very regulated industry where people will not get cheated, because all the time, you are concerned about this is a 2-star hotel and they are charging this much because they are closest to this tourist site. And if you don't drive and you have to use a public transport, then they're going to charge you way much than you would pay normally because they think you're a tourist, right? So they milk you. And so I think, standardizing some of these costs around tourist sites, around accommodation, around transportation will go a long way in inviting more people. So yeah, I think that will close a whole lot of gaps for us. First, give us access, let us know what is there, how to get there. And then, we need systems to sort of standardize costs along access, accommodation, and of course, maybe feeding to some of these places. So that's the 2 things that I think will be a quick solve for us, along, encouraging more people to see some of these sites.
Thank you, Kofi. So I'll go to Jason. You work with an organization whereby every community visited, they try to do something for the community through an SDG thing. So I was going to go to you on how do we start developing sustainable tourism in Ghana from your perspective?
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. So from my perspective, I think that to develop sustainable tourism in Ghana, we actually need to hold enough stakeholder conversations with locals or indigenes that are surrounded by these tourist sites. You realize that most times when you go to these places, these locals or indigenes might not have even heard of the SDGs before, but then we who are in the urban cities or who have been educated to a certain point, we most of the times hear about the Sustainable Development Goals. So I think it's about time that we actually decided to involve these locals, let them know what the SDGs are, let them know why we are striving to attain the SDGs. That way, they are able to own it, they are able to feel that they are part of something that the world is hoping to attain. That way, it enables them to actually think that, okay, sure. So if I do this, if I do that, it actually makes me better. It makes my fellow human being better. It makes the world a better place for all of us to live. Because if someone doesn't know about something and you don't explain it enough to them for them to know, and you just tell them to do it, they are sort of like a basic when it comes to contributing to it, because after all, they don't see what the true essence is. So I think that for us to actually promote sustainable tourism, for us to actually achieve the SDGs through tourism, we actually need to talk to these locals, engage them enough on what the SDGs are, why they need to help to attain the SDGs. That way, it becomes easy for us all. It doesn't look like, oh, okay, there are just certain people at the top that are just working towards the SDGs, and then those that are below at the local level don't really know what is going on. And we just come, release reports, release documentaries and all that, what the SDGs are and all. So I think it's about time that we actually involved these locals, people that have actually been around these tourist sites, who actually live around these tourist sites, who actually know the history pertaining to these tourist sites, to actually contribute the, let me say, informal knowledge that they have. That way it can also be fused with the formal knowledge that those who happen to be at the national level have, to help ensure that it's a collective work towards attaining the Sustainable Development Goals.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Jason. Ayo, do you have anything to add in terms of how do we start developing sustainable tourism?
Okay, yeah, thank you. So the first thing is actually being intentional. I really feel being intentional is going to go a very long way, because like, for example, having this conversation was very intentional. It was, we knew what we wanted to talk about. We knew that there is a problem that needs to be solved. So I think people coming up with more intentional actions will really, really go a long way in improving tourism in Ghana. And speaking from a perspective of a tourist, because I still see myself as a tourist in Ghana, I've been to a couple of tourist sites, and one thing that was very, very certain in all the tourist sites I've visited was the customer care, the customer relations in this tourist sites, because it's quite poor right now, and I think it would make a lot of sense to work on that. I think Joyce mentioned it also, and I really just connected to it immediately. She mentioned it, you know, about the customer service in Ghana. It's something that I think if it is worked on, people would feel more comfortable, because at the end of the day, it's about the experience. It's about, would you want to do it again? I mean, if something is recommended to you and then you go there and then they treat you bad, it's just normal human reaction. You would not want to go back again. So I think if these two things are tackled, it would really make it. And then lastly is partnership, like collaboration, actual collaboration, you know, because at the end of the day, it's something that has to do with the entire country, and you can't just do it alone. Even as a government, the government also needs to talk to people that are interested in this sector, talk to them and see how, you know, collaboration can happen. And then, so I think if these three things are actually tackled, I think there will be a very, very good improvement yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think one thing that Jason mentioned was, when she was speaking earlier, was on SDG education. I think it's something that we have seen over the years of how SDG is educated to Ghanaians. It's either going to be through a conference or through a video, like you mentioned. From your perspective, how do you think we start tackling SDG education, Ayo?
Okay, right. Thank you. Also, I think it's also about being intentional about it, and for especially young Ghanaians to see the need for them to be educated in the SDGs. I mean, as an organization, AIESEC, that's a major part of what we do, you know, trying to achieve development through the sustainable development goals. So I think young people need to, first of all, they need to like know the fact that the SDGs are a very, very important part of development as a country, development as a world, you know. So it's been intentional, and yeah, so basically young people also need to not just relax and sit down and think that, oh, these things are actually going to come to them, because it doesn't work like that. I mean, if you don't have the knowledge about something, then there is need for you to look for ways to get knowledge about that thing. But like I said, the first thing is knowing that this is actually very important. And I also think there have been a couple of people that have been putting in efforts. I mean, we've partnered with some people that have put in the effort to actually educate young people about the SDGs, but I think more can be done. And also, it would really, really make a lot of sense if the government also would put in much more intentional actions and steps towards the education of SDGs, especially starting from grassroots. And so as we recently held this program called World's Largest Lesson. So what we did was to go to high schools. We went to high schools in different communities, and starting from the junior secondary school, and we educated them about the SDGs, and actually, you know, put them in groups for them to work on a particular SDG of their choice. Okay, so they did that, and then before we left, you could actually sense that these children now know more, and then we're still checking on them to see how far they've gone with those programs or with those projects that they choose. So I think intentional steps like this, it would make all the difference in the world. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Ayo. So Kofi, I'll come back to you the same question in terms of SDG education. From the corporate world, I know Unilever does that. How do we start intensifying it to make it the reach more larger?
Larger people, all right, sure, thanks, Cole. I have a hard stop at 11, so I'm going to make this short. In terms of SDG education, right? I've been close to leveraging the SDGs as a platform for solutioning, which has gone great in terms of every other education and capacity building activity that we've been in, right? So we leverage the SDGs as a good platform on which we can solution on. And so I think about how we can encourage SDG education is around adopting it into a lot of their existing frameworks, right? So because a lot of people do capacity building activities, a lot of people do conferences, a lot of people engage in some of these dialogues. And if people are aware enough and adopt it as the foundation or adopt it as part of the topics or a platform on which they can build some of their already existing concepts and solutions, that would go great. And so I joined an organization called Design Thinking Ghana Hub, and most of some of the work we do, we make sure that, you know, the problem solving and problem space mapping and, you know, solution identification is all geared towards solving some SDGs. And it's really, really an excellent platform. You know, you can pick any of the any of the goals that aligns with what you are currently doing, and then you can solution on that. So I think, people can adopt it. I think really, it's going to go so much well into spreading the word around the SDGs and inviting more people to solution for some of the challenges around some of the key pillars. And these are really well clearly defined problem spaces that anybody can adopt once it aligns with your core business. And so that will go a long way into making sure that we are spreading the word and people are just plugging in without having very scattered solutions that do not go towards a grand solution, that do not go towards achieving anything along the SDGs. And so, yes, I think the summary is it's a good platform it's a good platform on which every entity can solution from, because then these problems are well defined already. And so once your business aligns with that, you can definitely adopt it and then have a lot of solutions coming from that platform of the SDG.
Thank you, Kofi. So I'll come back to Auntie Joyce. In your opinion, how fast do you think we can start with the SDG education over again? Because it seems that it's been mostly towards conferences and also left to the government to do it. So how do we start reaching out and making it a large reach? Yeah.
I think, first of all, it will start with conversations such as yours. And I'm particularly impressed with the level of interaction. And I think that as young people, you are actually very fortunate. You have access to the internet. You have a huge resource out there. At least most young people in Ghana have a mobile phone. They have access to data. So that is the first place. I believe I listened to one of them say that it is because, one, people don't even know about them. But you see, like I said, there is a whole logistics aspect that we are actually missing. If your tourist sector is very well developed, take, for example, when you go to Mumbai and you go to some of the very top hotels there, you find that you look outside the window and it's possible that it's actually in the middle of a slum, a very poor area. What I found out was that most often than not, the land is given by these dwellers to the investor or developer. What happens is that they are supposed to employ from that community, whether you like it or not. If they don't have adequate training, you're supposed to give the training. So what it means is that the community actually owns also the business. And I remember when I asked a young man who was in the gym with me why he was at work when he didn't feel too well. He said, oh, he can't go home because if he goes home the next day, someone else will come. And I thought, but why is that? He said, oh, well, the hotel is allowed to employ from the community. And for as long as there's someone willing to work, the work is available. So taking a day or two off or even taking a vacation means that he is giving room for someone else to take his job. So they work 24/7. Invariably, who does this benefit? It benefits the investor or the hotelier. But because of the level of commitment also from the community, it actually enhances the experience. But above all, it is actually also working to alleviate what? Poverty. So for whatever your reasons are for being in that hotel at any given time, whatever you are paying goes also to influence that economy that is down there. So that is one. Secondly, you can also start by way of a certain conversation. Maybe you can get media platforms to commit to promoting in one way or the other a conversation around how tourism can affect the sustainable SDGs. I remember years ago when the expansion of the Tamale airport was actually completed for use. One of the conversations at the time that former President Mahama started was that we wanted to actually develop medical tourism, improve transportation, especially for the countries that were in what landlocked countries, such as Mali and Burkina Faso, who are actually our neighbors to the northernmost part of our country. So what it means then is that you can come straight through the north, fly all the way to Accra, and you can have access to treatment. But remember also that there's also the Tamale Teaching Hospital. So these are all ways in which you can improve upon sustainable development goals by actually improving access, like the young man said, to these facilities. But above all, if the community does not buy into this concept that everything we do must one way or the other feed into the Sustainable Development Goals, then it becomes just a conversation amongst a few people like yourselves. But if you are able to go even to the campuses, for example, and have university students promoting these things as part of their campaigns, either for NUGs, for SRC, for TAIN, name it. But like I said, you are still one of the most advantaged young people that we can find at any given time. You can write. You can take, for example, one goal each week, promote it, and connect it to tourism and how it will impact largely on everybody in or around a tourist site in particular. If you are promoting a tourist location, for example, you are also promoting an SDG goal. So you can start that way. You can even visit some of these hotels located in these tourist sites, have them display one way or the other the benefits of even utilizing their facility to the sustainability of our development goals. You can visit the ports and the Port Authority. They are very well-established institutions. They can assist you in this regard. I think that advocacy of a certain kind, both local and of course on an international scale, will actually help. I remember, for example, those days when we had Ghana Airways. If you were flying abroad, you will hear the Akwaba in Tree. And so everybody knew what Akwaba was. And you'd see the tail end with Akwaba beautifully inscribed on it. And everybody knew that Akwaba made simply welcome in Ghanaian language. So this is another way that you promote some of these sustainable development goals, just by maybe objectifying the goals. For example, you can say that this is a hospital that has a certain development goal at hand. You can explore avenues for medical tourism if you visit hospital A or B. You can even advocate for foreigners who come here without a health insurance. How would you access medical facilities in Ghana? This is a very easy way. You can visit private hospitals and they'll be happy to participate in the next level at no cost to anybody. But of course, the only people who benefit are the persons who take advantage of this exercise. But certainly it has to start from somewhere. There must also be a correlation of anything you do in terms of a sustainable development goal to tourism. It is what most other developed countries have done and are doing. I don't see why we cannot do that. But I believe that you guys serve as our biggest resource. You are a benchmark, and I think you can do a lot more to sustain these development goals, to actually ensure that you connect them one way or the other to tourism. I love one of the suggestions that was made about access to tourist sites and information on sale. When you visit Kenya, for example, at the airport, you'll find even peanuts with safari written on it in a beautiful inscription or drawing of an animal or the other. You'll find immediately transportation available to any of those sites that are available for you to visit. Immediately, it's actually on demand. And this is just right next door in East Africa. When you're in South Africa, pretty much the same. When you get to Kotoka International Airport, how often do you see adverts of our tourist sites? How often do you see insurance companies advertising our tourist sites? How often do you see hospital facilities welcoming persons needing medical attention? We've heard about the number of individuals who were actually evacuated here to receive attention when they had COVID. These things were not advertised enough. Maybe it will be a short news item, but we have not tried in any way to benefit from these visits by these very important and great personalities. So these are some of the conversations that I think you can start. You can start on social media. You can start on Facebook, on Instagram, name it. You could even start a very little conversation. Every day you post one tourist site. You give access information. You say what hotels are available, what types of food are available, what facilities you can have, how you can access them. I think that this is a very nice way to actually bring these SDGs home to everybody, and how you can also use the SDGs to market what is available in our tourism sector, which is your area of interest. But I believe that in all of this, there is enormous opportunity in the tourism sector for the Sustainable Development Goals and how to achieve them.
Thank you, Madam Joyce. Ayo, I'll go to you again. In terms of what we can do, like Madam Joyce was saying already, so do you have anything to add what we can do to contribute to sustainable tourism?
Sorry, can you repeat that? I didn't hear what you said.
What we can do to make a sustainable tourism happen in Ghana in our small way.
Okay, yes. I think I really connect with what she said about these things not being advertised enough, because it's not just about the word of mouth. I mean, the word of mouth can only go a long way, but then they still need to really invest in advertisement. So you take countries that are very good with tourism. Take, for example, the United Arab Emirates. Without even going there, the kind of pictures that you see, because advertising, it just has this psychological effect on whoever is going to, set eyes on it. So there is a need to, invest in that advertisement. There's a need to invest in the branding of Ghanaian tourism. And then what we have right now in Ghana also needs to be, we need to work with what we have. So take, for example, we have people coming in to Ghana, like a lot, like there are people coming into Ghana, but then it all relates to, the advertisement. It is not there, the word is not out there enough. So take, for example, Rwanda signed a partnership with a football club. I think it was Arsenal. And you can always, so far you watch football, or you just see, or you're on Twitter, and you definitely see Visit Rwanda on an Arsenal jersey, So things like that, I think it needs to be more intentional. And yeah, that I would say it again, like being intentional about it is what would really help. And then also, so let me give this very short story about my own experience again with a tourist site. So we went to Aide. Currently, I have a couple of people from Ethiopia, from Germany, from Cote d'Ivoire. They came here on exchange with our organization. And we went to Aide, to a tourist site. And when we left, when we got there, when we got to the waterfall, we had a problem because one of my vice presidents got really injured. She got really injured, and it was because of the road. The road was so terrible. So it's like, before these people come into the country, we are telling them that, oh, we have very nice places in Ghana, but then they come and then they see a totally different thing. So the road to the waterfall, very beautiful waterfall, but the road to that place is just very terrible. It is really bad. Maybe the rain made it worse, but then there is a need to actually, have these conversations, take these conversations to higher levels. And I mean, we're doing, this conversation is a very good step, but then we also need to take it to the higher level. And that's also where collaboration also comes in, like collaborating with the right people that are actually going to make sure that there is a change. It's not just, okay, yes, see the problem, there's a problem, the road is not good, the advertisement is not there, people don't really know these places. And yeah, so take, for example, checking on Google. When you check on Google, you don't see everything. You don't see everything about Ghana. Ghana is a very beautiful place. I mean, I've been here for quite a while now, and I can say Ghana is really beautiful. And there are some of the places that I've been to that probably would want to go back to Google and check if they are actually there, but I didn't see them, and that means I cannot maybe tell another person or recommend it to another person, and then more of these things happen, and then it has a very negative effect on tourism as a whole for Ghana. So I think if these things can be really tackled, I think there's definitely going to be an improvement with tourism in Ghana.
Thank you, Ayo. Jason?
Okay, yes. So for me, I think it's also important that we actually, to promote sustainable tourism involving the local indigenes would also mean that giving them something to show off, especially to tourists that come to these sites. So personally, I've been to a number of tourist sites in Ghana where when you go, exactly, there are no souvenirs for you to actually show up when you come back home that, oh, I actually went here, I actually went there. You just have the pictures to show. But then it's also quite exciting when you are actually able to come back home. And even if you have siblings who are younger than you, or even those who are older than you that haven't been to some of these places, you can actually have some of these souvenirs to show them. And sometimes it's sad when you go to these places and then you don't have these souvenirs to show when you come back home. So I think that's one thing that we could also actually look into when it comes to advertising these storage sites. We actually have a system where souvenirs are actually made. So you go to, let's say, Kentapo Waterfalls, you have something to show that I actually went here, and not just the pictures. You go to Boabim Fiema Monkey Sanctuary, you have something to show. You go to Apajato, you have something to show. These things, I think it's also one thing that we should also look into with regards to advertising these storage sites. And then one thing that we can also do when it comes to these advertisements, I think the Ghana Tourism Authority, in collaboration with other private stakeholders, should also be more intentional in advertising these storage sites with the television stations that we have in this country. So if it's for 5 minutes, if it's for 10 minutes a day, there's a certain tourist site that's being shown, the accommodation that is available, transportation to get there, and people's experiences. Like if we have these things being done, so that for those of us that don't always have access to the internet when we are watching television at home, we can actually see these things. And also, you can also add the radio stations as well, so that for those that are visually impaired, they can also have know what it is like when they hear about these things. And I think one thing is also that we should also look into making our tourist sites accessible for people living with disabilities, because if we make it an all-inclusive development where no one is left out, it would actually draw in people from all sectors to also help in developing these things. So I think for us, these are some of the things that we can do, not just the government, but the private stakeholders, that's individuals, organizations, groups, and societies, like everyone who just come on board to own it. Because at the end of the day, if you own it, you would actually want to put in your all, you want to put in every effort, so that at the end of the day, you can stand tall and say that, oh, I actually contributed to that, I actually contributed to this. And then it's not just like we are just living it one side, but then everyone is involved. So I think these are some of the things that we can do as individuals, as government, as groups and societies to help promote sustainable tourism in Ghana.
Thank you, Jason.
And one more thing. To add, I also think that as a nation, sometimes we are more pushed towards one sector. So then if we can make tourism not just about going to these places, but then actually experiencing nature in its glory. Actually, with regards also to medical tourism that Madam Joyce talked about, so that at the end of the day, when we talk of tourism, we are not just looking at these heritage sites, but then we're also looking at these natural sceneries that we have. We're also looking at these medical facilities that we have. We're also looking at other infrastructure that we have that can draw in people.
Okay. Thank you, Jason. So we'll be wrapping up soon and be taking the final comments from each of the panelists. But you have some few questions here. One question. Who or which organization or group are key to address and solve problems of high cost of hotels in Ghana? Anyone want to answer? Okay. Madam Joyce, will you able to help, please? The question is, who or which organization or group are key to address and solve the problems of high cost of hotels in Ghana?
That's one usually, it's actually a very interesting point because these things are all demand driven. So I think largely, if you develop your tourism to a point where you have huge numbers, listen, you go to some jurisdictions in the summer period. If you don't make a reservation probably a year ahead of your visit, you'll struggle to find accommodation, any decent type of accommodation, for example. It is because these places are largely tourist driven, and there's a huge demand for any type of hospitality that is available. Take, for example, when Florida, when the beaches were opened, after this hugely, unsuccessful attempt to stem COVID, when the vaccine finally arrived, you should have seen the numbers of people walking along those beaches. Look at the protests that took place when those beaches were closed down and shut because of the pandemic. So certainly, if you have a huge tourist industry and you have seasons where you have many tourists visiting, I have no doubt that it will definitely drive down prices because there will certainly be more competition. I think one of the key challenges we have right now is that there's actually very little or no competition. And the tourist sector, as we have it in terms of hospitality centers, are usually mostly for people who are able to afford all sorts of things. But like the young man said, when you have young people, youth, who want to travel to all these places, you really have to be deliberate. You have to be intentional about what sorts of incentives you provide for them to encourage them to visit and visit again. Because you see, if it is too expensive, few people in a certain income bracket can afford to go. Even local people sometimes live within these tourist sites, like the gentleman said, and have no clue that these places even exist in the communities where they live, because they see them as enclaves for people who can afford and just never go there themselves. So these are all things that actually need, one, to be discussed, two, to make recommendations, three, for us to continue to invest in improving upon not just the tourist experience, but even in our tourism as a sector. Because if you invest more, you are certainly going to make more returns. And like I said, for most of the people who arrived here for the year of return, and we've had Pan-Affairs, we've had all these Pan-African things that have taken place over the years, the lasting complaint you receive is the cost of living, cost of health for strangers or foreigners who come here and unfortunately fall sick, access to these places, cost of transportation, even cost of food. Because you find that most often than not, the best restaurants are the ones that are similar to sometimes even very lower level restaurants from where they are coming from. It is actually the reason why you've seen an influx of these international brands such as Kentucky Fried Chicken and Burger King and what have you. These are all things that were fueled actually by tourist interest. But before that, we had our own franchises such as Frankie's and Good Old Papaya and other places. So these are all things that exist for people who are interested. But certainly, if you look at it in terms of costs, the average person who eats and lives on Burger King, for example, can afford to do that probably on about $3 a day and afford to sleep in a hotel that is decent for about $100 to $150 a night. I believe that here in our part of the world, most decent facilities would cost you at least $300 to $350. That is even for basic levels. So that is still too expensive for most people to afford. So these are all matters that I think that conversations such as yours should find ways to improve. But if you don't improve access, if you don't improve the experience, if you don't improve upon hospitality, you will not find the requisite numbers to beat down prices of some of these rather more expensive places that we are talking about. But certainly, all the young people have made very good points, and I think that there are points that should be taken on board. And if people are listening, these are some of the ways in which you can improve individuals' experience. But you must first and foremost situate your tourism in a way that invites local interest as well as whatever foreign interest there is. Because it's only the locals who would actually celebrate it enough so that others can also benefit from it or even want to come and experience it. Things such as a year of return, they don't happen very often. It happens maybe once in a while. But even with all the government facilitation, we get a lot of complaints still. So I believe that in terms of cost associated with tourism, it is a subject matter that we can still explore. It's cost that I think we can still work to beat them. But the question is how? And of course, achieving this in a pandemic is even more difficult because people are very anxious. People don't even want to travel. So nobody wants to come to a country where you sleep in a hotel that costs you about $400 and doesn't even measure to one another country for $150 or $100 a night. These are conversations that we should continue to have. But in Ghana, most hotels, when you ask why it's so expensive, they tell you it's demand driven. Or they tell you we only charging this because it's a 5-star hotel. But you go into the bed and it doesn't feel like a 5-star bed. You enter the facility and nothing feels like a 5-star facility. But you can go to other places where even a bed and breakfast is very neat and beautiful. You go to Amsterdam now, they have them Airbnbs for when you have a layover. You'll be surprised. They're clean, crisp, and come at almost no cost. And people are happy to use them. So you don't find people even lounging even in the lounges anymore. If you have a long travel time, people would book for these Airbnbs. They are so competitive and in demand that if you don't even make a reservation early, you might not find one. And this is happening across the world. So I think it is also about the cost should actually be commensurate with the value of the service that you're getting. So these are conversations that I believe we can continue to have. The solution lies in the numbers, the solution lies in the type of service you provide, but the solution also lies in improved facilities. And then you can have lower costs.
Thank you. Kofi, any final words?
Thanks, Cole. I think final words really for anybody that's joined us or will catch this recording later. Final words, so there's so much interesting things to see in Ghana. Myself, I've been blown away doing travel for a few years now, and there's so much more to see. And it doesn't cost, it won't break your bank to see some of these tourist sites. And so final words is go out there, follow some of the micro influencers on IG that show you what there is in Ghana, and make a point to go see something in Ghana. Travel Ghana and travel local. Thanks.
Ayo?
Okay, yeah, for me, my final words would be for us to actually keep having conversations like this, because it's when we have conversations like this that we can know what is happening, know what is wrong, and know what needs to be fixed. And yeah, little actions make all the difference. So let's keep, doing, even if it's the most little effort, putting in the most little effort, it goes a long way. So yeah, thank you.
Jason.
Okay, yeah. So I would say that for young people and for those listening who are actually older, it's not just about listening for listening's sake or hearing for hearing's sake. You actually have to put in the actions to show that you want to contribute to something. Because if you just listen and then you keep procrastinating that, oh, I'll do this, and then you don't put in your all, you don't put in the effort, you wouldn't get results at the end of the day. So I think people should actually get on board, not just listen and applaud, but also put in the actions that are necessary. And for young people out there across the country, you can get in touch with the Explorers Club, where we are actually engaged in sustainable tourism to help Ghana and the world as a whole. Thank you very much.
Okay. Auntie Joyce, any final words?
I think that this is a conversation that is a work in progress. I'm sure that there's so much more that we can achieve if we are able to get all you young people to participate in one way or the other in this conversation. I'm sure there's so much more you can do even beyond this conference and this conversation to actually bring to fruition all of these beautiful and wonderful ideas that we've all actually shared in this conversation. But I think certainly this is just the beginning. I think that you ought to take the conversation to the next level by actually trying first to promote what we have, push for adequate investment. You could even push for a certain national dialogue as young people on how tourism can actually become the mainstay, can actually become one of the greatest in terms of opportunities for young people, one of the biggest opportunities for investment beyond mining, beyond oil, beyond fisheries, name it. And I'm sure that there will be some policymakers willing to make a difference by listening to you and giving you the needed support. So as they say, the sky is the limit. So take it from here. And thank you so much for having me. Have a wonderful day, all of you.
Thank you. And thank you for everyone who has watched us over Facebook and YouTube. This is the end of the conference, and the conference doesn't end here. We'll be having a second conference tomorrow on sports tourism and the third on Africa Students and Travel Conference. We hope to see you there, and thank you to my panel for making it today and having this fruitful conversation. And hopefully next year we'll have a much bigger conference, hopefully physically, and take it from there. Thank you. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.